All right. Hello, everyone. I hope you are doing well today. I am joined by P.E. Craven, who is the author of Realm Leaper, as well as Windwalker, which is the follow-up to Realm Leaper. And we're just here to chat today about being an author, books, and then just some more fun stuff. So thank you so much for taking time out of your day to join me today.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's just get right into it. So tell me a little bit about what made you decide to kind of get into being an author and what your path to publication was.
Yeah. So publishing a book was not really ever on my bingo card. Um, it kind of came out of a development of just a really large transition in life. I was leaving a career that I had, poured my heart and soul into, and for the first time in my whole adult life, I was unemployed for a little bit. I had some time where I was able to try and figure out what I wanted to do. And um, I had honestly, I had had a dream over and over and over again for like 3 months. And one day I got bored and I was like, I wonder if I could write it. Um, and it kind of just went from there. I was like, well, okay, I wrote a chapter. What happens next? And then that's where Realm Leaper came from. Um, I was just kind of like, I wonder if I could write a book, and um, it that's where it happened. And it was never meant to be published. When I was doing it, I just had a friend who jumped on board, and she was like, "You have to publish this, or I'm going to kick you in the knees." And so that's where it all kind of came from, and uh, where my career before, I was a dance teacher and a choreographer. Um, and my storytelling, I think, really grew out of that.
hmm
Um, and writing now is has kind of replaced that need for storytelling.
hmm hmm It's really
Yeah.
funny you say that you had a dream because that's kind of how my novel like came about is I had a dream when I was in college and like that's how like I tried to write it and then didn't work out at that time in life. And then now, I'm trying again, after seeing all these, indie authors like being able to, follow their
Yeah.
publishing journey. So it's kind of funny that that happened. Really great dream then because that turned into a really, really great book. Um, so describe your writing process a little bit. Like, do you outline? Like, do you plot? Do you quilt? What do you do?
Yeah, kind of a mixture of both. So Realm Leaper, the first draft, was complete pantsing.
Mm,
Um, when I wrote it, it was like reading it for the first time. I would sit down to write, and I would give myself like, okay, well, we're gonna do 90 minutes and just see what happens in
mhm.
90 minutes. And I would write, and it would be like, oh, okay, well, I didn't know that was going to happen. um, there's a few scenes that, as I was writing it, it just kind of was like happening, and then I had to sit there afterwards, like that was a lot that just happened. Um, book two was different because in the pantsing of book one, um, there was a lot of um, plot lines that were laid. And as I wrote it, I was like, okay, well, that's going to lead to this at a later point. Um, so book two, I had to do a little bit more outlining to make sure all the parts fit together. Because you get a lot of answers in book two.
Mhm.
Book one like leads you into those mysteries and stuff. Um, so that one, it honestly, I keep telling people, book two was a brat to write. She kicked and screamed the whole time. um, and then I'm pushing into book three, and I think book three will be a little bit kind of a combination of the two books. This time we have. some loose pathways. I know where everybody's going, but I don't know 100% what's going to happen once they get there.
Hmm. I think that's kind of an exciting part about, about writing is that you kind of like figure it out and it's, sometimes, you do have like a whole idea of like how this, trilogy or how the series is going to be. But then it's kind of fun just being like, maybe like I don't know, like maybe like we'll
Yeah.
just kind of see like where like, like the writing takes you. So that's kind of cool. That's a cool process.
Yeah.
Um, Tell me a little bit about what you enjoy about writing in the fantasy genre.
Um, well, reading for me has always been um a way to maybe like a dissociating coping mechanism a
Mm,
little bit, but also like kind of a lifeline to try and figure out the world in a way. Um, I mean, I might not be dealing with dragons or mythical creatures, but the archetypes and the tropes that are in fantasy are incredibly relevant to just regular mortal human life.
mm-hmm.
Um, and so I've always been drawn to those big archetype ideas. They really resonate with me. Um, so for me, a lot of what I write gives me an outlet to kind of sort through the things that I experience. I
Mm,
mean, it's on a completely different scale. Um, and honestly, I think sometimes when it is on that like larger, grander scale, it's almost more palatable for us. Um, Especially if it's in a whole different world, it's like this made up place. It gives us space to process and experience what we need to experience in our regular lives. So there is a lot in this specific series um, that is inspired by people I love, by things I've gone through. Um, that whole idea of like finding your place and finding your people is very deeply rooted in this series. And then I have another book series that I'm working on right now, and the setting there, it starts out in Southeast Georgia. That's where I was born and raised. Well, I wasn't born there, but that's where I was raised. um, and there's a lot of imagery there that's really really special to me. So it's just new ways to kind of connect with your life and your experiences and the people around you, and sometimes the things that are really hard to understand in this world, sometimes it gives us an easier way to understand it.
mm-hmm. Well, you definitely spoke to me with, with that piece about like writing, like basically like writing through, because I think I'm a
Yeah.
mental health therapist in my full time. So, like, that is a wonderful coping mechanism, and trying to kind of write through and sort through. So, I really, really like that, that you said that. Um, in your writing space, what do you need to kind of stay on task and focused?
Okay, so I'm on the neuro spicy spectrum. So
Me too. Like, I have my ADHD shirt
yeah, okay. So sometimes routine is necessary, and then sometimes routine doesn't work.
on.
So um one of the things that I've kind of had to learn is it's okay to set it down and walk away if it's not working right then. Um, Sometimes, if you're just sitting there and sitting there, that's your brain saying like, all right, well, I need to simmer for a minute. And I writing Windwalker really taught me that. There were some times where I just sat at the computer like struggling to like, all right, we have a deadline. You set a deadline for yourself.
Mhm.
It's time. The pressure's there. um and it just wasn't coming, so I had to stop, I had to go, I had to walk, I had to do something else um to give my brain some space to figure out what was happening next. um so I think part of it is listening to my storytelling muscles a little bit. When they say it's time to stop, you got to stop for a little bit and walk away. Um, but I find changing up my location helps sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I'm on the front porch, sometimes I'm at the dining room table, sometimes I'm in my room. Location does help my brain kind of it's like walking through the portals, the doors opens up different parts of your brain. And then snacks. A lot of times I find snacks and then putting my phone away helps me get rooted and ready to work.
Good, good. And what's your kryptonite as a writer? What gets in your way?
Probably social media.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a
Yeah.
lot for a lot of us.
Yeah. I do suffer from doom scrolling. I like it's that executive dysfunction where sometimes my body just doesn't want to do the checklist and mark things off. Um, I think it's hard to. I have a full-time job, and I'm a mom, and then I've got, other social responsibilities. Um, so sometimes it's hard to, keep yourself on the schedule. But then also, if for the writers who are like balancing writing and then like having a full-time day job or having, maybe you're a caregiver, um, it is okay to have a break.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like right now, I'm not writing as much right now because I've realized the season that we're in right this minute, um, is just it needs we need a little bit of space.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so finding acceptance in that and like it's okay, I don't have to be writing all the time. The stories are waiting; they'll still be there when there's time. So um, I think social media is definitely one thing that holds me back sometimes. Um, but also trying to start listening to myself and like understanding what my body and my brain needs is a place that we're really holding space for right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Good. Good. You're definitely like you're definitely speaking to like all, all those things that I've experienced and, seen obviously, others and clients experience. So, those the acceptance and, putting pressure on yourself. I think we're our own worst critic, right? Like,
Yeah.
even when we write, I can imagine, like I've just started, but I'm finding that it's very difficult to not be so hard on yourself. So it's definitely something to keep an eye on. Okay, so let's move into talking about your book. Let's only talk about Realm Leaper. So if nobody knows about this book, they don't get spoiled for the next one. Um,
Okay.
so if you had to describe Realm Leaper in one sentence, what would that sentence be?
It is a portal romantasy with lots of steam and some payoff in it, and focuses on people who are facing fate on their own terms.
I love that. I love that. I definitely think that that fits. Um, so the next question is hard for everybody that I've interviewed so far. Who is your favorite character to write and why?
Okay. Ooh, okay. So it is a tie. I'm gonna cheat. I'm just gonna say it's a tie.
That's okay.
Um, Sage and Raphael in book
Mm,
one were my favorite to write. Um, ooh, actually, okay, I'm gonna say the first time I wrote the book, so like the first draft, it was Sage and Raphael. And Raphael is just like he's the person I want to be, which
I
is
love
why
it.
I think that's why I love writing him so much. He's like love incarnate. He just is a person that he always ends up being everybody's favorite person in the book because he's just so great. Um, but in the second edit, once I was working with a developmental editor,
Mhm.
we fleshed out Gavin's story a lot. And there were some surprises that came up in his storyline the second time we wrote it. So I would say originally it was Sage and Raphael, and Sage is like a lot of me.
Hmm.
So she's just easy to write for me. But the second time around, it was Gavin. He's really the one who like surprised me the most while we were editing it. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. And I just read this again today and did my tabbing, because I like to do that before I do an interview. And I feel like I got like I mean, obviously like I love Raphael, but I think like I got a lot more like out of like Gavin's character, like reading it again. So that was pretty cool for me. Um, what was the most challenging part about writing Red Leaper?
So, my writing experience before this was very academic and very commercial.
Mm-hmm.
I've been writing like forever, but a lot of it had to do with some research that I was given an opportunity to be a part of, and a lot of commercial writing, a lot of copywriting. So it was always very, like it has its own flavor and its own formulas. And so when I moved into creative writing, there was there was a little bit of growing pains. I had to learn a little bit different sentence structure.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like it's a little bit more conversationalist than academic writing, um, but also a little bit more dynamic than sometimes a lot of commercial writing. So my writing style had to grow and change quite a lot. And so working with a developmental editor was really extremely beneficial for me. And I found a great editor. Her name is Claire. She's in the UK and she's phenomenal. But we clicked. So I think that's really important for new writers who are really working towards getting published, is finding an editor that really understands your voice and your writing style. Um, because I think that has made the biggest impact in my publishing journey out of everything that I've done. She just has made a huge impact on my experience with self-publishing.
Awesome. Can you tell us a little bit about who may not know what developmental editing is? Like I know that there's
Yeah.
a lot of different types of editing. So what's developmental editing?
Yeah. So she really focused on character arcs and the story arcs, plot lines, just really making sure that there's not like a gaping hole in the story where your readers are going to go, wait, no, they could just jump on the ship. Why didn't they just jump on they could have sailed around to Mordor. Um, uh, yeah. Um, so she's really great. She also coaches. So I was able to get some coaching from her because she's had experience in self-publishing and traditional publishing, so she understands the routes. Um, so she's really excellent. She has a lot of resources. A lot of times, the developmental editor will also have a lot of resources to help you map out and do your own work for your story. They're not just going to tell you, oh, this needs to be changed. But they're going to ask the probing questions that need to be asked. Like, why is this character doing this? Why are they there? Why is this happening? Um, and sometimes you have an answer. Sometimes you're like, oh, well, that's because, blah, blah, blah is going to happen. And,
Mhm.
like we need them there for this. And if anything's messy in that process, they can wrap it up, help you iron it out. Um, Whereas a copy editor or a line editor is just going to look for grammar, punctuation, style, even making sure the voice is, stylistically appropriate, um, which is also important. I think it's great if you can invest in multiple types of editing. um, some of us can't. Some of us use other um, tools to help us get there.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you for telling us about that.
Yeah.
Um, and a question that came to my mind is what made you go indie versus trad?
A lot of it is because I'm very impatient. The traditional publishing route, you have to send out query letters,
Hmm.
find a literary agent, um, and then even after you get through all of that, you might find out that, the working relationship just doesn't pan out. And so then you're all the way back at the beginning trying to find an agent, trying to find a, a publishing house that has submissions that are open. And um, I have huge respect for anybody that goes that route. But for me, I don't like, I'm a doer. I like to get things done and, checked off my list, despite the executive dysfunction. Um, uh, and then the other reason is, as a dance studio owner, a choreographer, I'm used to having a lot of creative license in the projects that I'm involved in.
Hmm.
Um, so I like having that creative authority to choose an artist, to send back feedback. Um, I like saying, no, I don't want to do this trope this way. We're going to twist it this way. Or um, I like having the authority to do that. And I feel like indie publishing really gives you the reins. The downside to that, though, is that you do it all. You find
Hmm.
the you find the art people, you find the editors, you find if you're going to market, if you're going to do any sort of PR, you find all of that, and that's probably the hardest part is the PR side of it. And then wherever you decide to print, you have to figure out their formatting. What tools are they using? What software do they use? It's all different. So if you use, in my case, I use Ingram Spark
Hmm.
to print hard copies, and then I use KDP or Kindle Direct Publishing for ebooks. Um, their softwares are totally different. So
Mm.
the way I format for Ingram Spark is different than how I have to format for KDP. Um, and there's people you can hire to do that for you. Um, but also you can just learn how to do it yourself. But then again, you're doing it all.
Hmm. Hmm. A
Yeah.
lot more work, but then the payoff is a lot more freedom.
Yes, exactly.
What is your favorite line or quote from the book?
Oof. Oof. Probably near the end of the book, Gavin, uh,
Looks.
I think it's chapter 32. It's at the beginning of chapter 32, and they're like, um, they're fighting, they're having a fight, and
Okay.
he says, it's time to stop running. And it's like it has so much gravity when he says it.
Hmm.
Um, and she kind of throws it back at him, and she's like, "Oh, that's rich coming from you,"
Yep.
because of his story, his background. And then he's like, "Well, I don't get to run anymore either, so neither should you." And I just love that conversation where, like, they're really being honest with each other at that point. Like, she's let her guard down a little bit, he's let his guard down, and they're like, you can tell there's a lot of conflict between them in that moment, but they're on their way to finding each other. Like it's the what's the word I'm looking for? It's the final conflict
Mhm.
before they're on level playing ground.
Awesome. Awesome. And so, when people write, they envision their characters, sometimes we get character art, sometimes, we just envision them in certain ways. So if you were to envision your main characters as actors in an adaptation, who would those people be?
I played this game with my friend before, and it's really hard because, well, the hardest one is probably Gavin. I've looked at tons of actors, and I don't see anybody really truly emulating him. Um, he's somewhere between, oh, what's his name? he was kind of a heartthrob not too long ago. I can't remember his name. Um, for stage, I don't know. Now I can't think of any actors off the top of my head. Okay, so Queen Ariel, I'll say. I'm probably gonna butcher this name, but for me, she's very clear. Um, it's Lupita.
Nyong'o?
mm, yes.
Yeah.
If she had long braids, that would be Ariel for
Mm,
sure. So that's the easy one.
awesome. Awesome. Okay, so now we're gonna go into the final section here. And it's just some general like fun questions. So, what do you like to do when you're not writing?
Read. I do a lot of reading. um, I'm a mom again, so like, um, we spend a lot of time at ball fields, and doing extracurriculars and stuff. And um, I think that is really very special, that time. I like really kind of enjoy the time in the car, especially if I have one kid with me. That time on the way to extracurriculars where we just get to hang out and talk, and they have a moment to share stuff with me. And then we camp a lot, and our family also snowboards. So right now it's a very busy season for us.
Mm-hmm. Awesome, awesome. Um, this has been my favorite question from the interviews. What are some books or authors that you would recommend?
Ooh, okay. Um, I think so. As far as storytelling goes, one that made a huge impact on me was Samantha Shannon's the Mime Order series, or
Yep.
the Bone
Own
Season series.
season. Yep.
Yes,
Have you
love
read
it.
Diary of the Orange Tree?
Okay, I started it, and I'm
It's
a mood reader,
yeah,
and it wasn't hitting the vibes at the time, so it's on my like go back
it's
TBR.
heavy. It's heavy,
Yeah,
but it's really good. I haven't read the second one.
yeah. I think I need to do that one on audio.
Yes.
Sometimes, like, some things are good for print for me, some are audio. But I'm a heavy mood reader. Um, the other one is Diana Gabaldon
Yep.
and her Outlander series, because that woman can romanticize
Yeah.
anything. Um, I could read her talk about people washing dishes for chapters on end. Um, she's a beautiful writer. And so for anybody that has a hard time, any writers that have a hard time describing mundane, repetitive things, she's a great one to study because she does such a beautiful job of just describing the world of
Hmm.
her characters. Yeah.
Awesome. Good recommendations.
Yeah.
And I know that you kind of shared a lot of advice for aspiring authors, but is there anything else that you would impart maybe on a younger you?
Um, Probably I would have encouraged myself to start earlier.
Mm,
Um, it was always something I admired and just never gave myself time to try, writing like in this type of creative way. Um, so probably that. And then the other one is, this goes twofold. So on one hand, um, write your, like, don't be afraid to go outside of the bounds on the types of worlds you're writing, the types of storyline, the types of characters. They don't have, none of it has to look like anybody else's book.
mm-hmm.
None of it has to look like what anybody is familiar with. Just because, this type of trope is really popular doesn't mean, that you have to have it in your book.
Mm-hmm.
But on the flip side, don't be afraid to write something comfortable. There's
Mm-hmm.
a reason why there's hundreds of books with the one bed trope or with the chosen one. And you know what? We're still reading them. People still read them and they crave them. So I think there's like this debate on social media right now about, you need to read more diverse. You need to, or you know, stop using this type of trope, or stop, like, don't listen to any of that,
Mhm.
because your story will find the right readers. The the types of things that people love to read is so vast. You will find the right reader eventually. um so I think not allowing yourself to be held back by what you think people are saying, just because you heard one person say it doesn't mean it's a huge sentiment. And so what? That's just not your audience then.
Good. Awesome. So write for you, write what you
Yeah.
want to write, rather than let other people dictate. I like
Yeah.
that. Do you play music while you write, or do you have any specific songs that make you think of Rum Leaper?
So there's an album by Thomas Ferguson, who is a composer. He does a lot of music for, especially like World of Warcraft, I think, and Skyrim, and so big video games. Which I don't play video games, but he had an album that had recently come out when I first started writing Realm Leaper. And I really loved listening to that. I have a hard time writing with lyrics in the background,
Mhm.
because then my hands want to use the same words.
Yep.
um, so everything has to be instrumental. But Thomas Ferguson, and I don't remember the name of the album off the top of my head.
Awesome.
Um, but he's got great. It's very I mean, it sounds like a soundtrack,
Mhm.
is what it sounds like. Yeah.
Cool. Cool. Um, and have you ever traveled anywhere, like as research for this world, or is there anywhere that kind of inspired what the world looks like here? Like the thing that I think about is like the Citadel, right? The what did you call it? Like the obelisk. Like that, like where'd that come from? Like that makes me think of like in Seattle. Like that's how I look
Yeah.
at it.
Yeah. So that's very similar to the look, except for it's like um what we would consider either ancient Greek or
Mhm.
Egyptian. So the interesting thing about Realm Leaper is it's two worlds. We have two separate worlds. We have
Mhm.
Sage's world and Gavin's world. And Gavin's world is really based off of the whole Mediterranean bowl, and like
Mhm.
the ancient civilizations and mythologies. So you get a little bit of Greek mythology, a little Roman mythology, a little bit of ancient Middle Eastern mythology in there. Um, and it's not so heavy that it overwhelms it, but there's a lot of that scenery and imagery um, that is woven into that world. And then Sage's world is more based off of um, parts of Northern Europe, and then
Mhm.
like the British Islands. Um, and so, but it's steampunk. It's like a modern steampunk. So think steampunk, but like in 2020.
Mhm.
So they use alchemy, they have technology, they also have a lot of magic. Everything has magic woven into it. So that was really what it was based off of. Originally, there was going to be more than just the two worlds. And there's one other world that book three will take us to. And that is going to be based off of northern South America. So a lot of the mythology um, and some of the ancient history of those people. So that's kind of where I am right now, as I'm doing some extra research, collecting some information as I build that world and those characters. Um, but yeah, that's I really wanted to see, like, okay, well, what if all of these areas that had a lot to do with each other, um, what if they were layered on top of each other
Mhm.
at the same time? Like, what would happen? That's kind of where the idea started from.
Cool. Cool. All right. And so my last question that I just added that for some reason I thought about it. Um, any upcoming events or signings that you have?
Yeah, so the next one I'm positive of is the Romanticy Book Con in Orlando, Florida. It's October 3rd through 5th. Super stoked about it. I cannot wait. And then there's a few other things I'm looking at over the summer, but the best way to keep touch with that is either on my social media or I also have a newsletter that you can subscribe to on my website.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to do this interview with me today. And remember that you can get Realm Leaper and Windwalker now. And then when can we expect book 3? Do you know any general timeline?
It's probably going to be 2025.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you
Yeah.
so much for taking the time today. It was great talking with you.
Yeah. Thank you so much. This is lovely.